Before we begin, take a moment, check where you are, check the time, check the light around you. Most of the stories you're about to hear didn't start with screams. They didn't start with danger. They started with something ordinary. A stop for the night, a place that looked safe, a moment where nothing felt wrong, until it did. These are stories from the road, from RV parks, from places meant for rest. And every one of them has the same question buried inside it. If something feels wrong, would you notice it in time? Listen carefully. Some lights are better left turned off.
The first night at that RV park felt normal enough. Too normal, actually. We pulled in just before sunset. A small place near the highway, gravel ground, a flickering office light, a sign that said, "Overnight parking available." Nothing fancy, nothing alarming. The kind of place you stop at because you're tired, and because you tell yourself you'll only stay one night. We parked, leveled the RV, hooked up the power. Dinner was something quick, the kind of meal you barely remember afterward. By 10, everything outside was quiet. No music, no voices, just the low hum of the highway in the distance. I remember checking the lock on the door before going to bed. Not because I felt scared, just habit. Sleep came easily, too easily. I don't know what woke me up at first. There was no sound yet, no movement. Just that feeling when your eyes opened suddenly, like your body decided it was time. The RV was dark. The digital clock above the dashboard glowed faint red. 2:17 a.m. I remember staring at it for a second, long enough for the numbers to burn into my eyes. Then came the knock. Not loud, not aggressive. 3 soft taps, evenly spaced, almost polite. I held my breath without realizing it. Another knock followed. Same rhythm, same pressure, like someone standing there, waiting. I slid out of bed and moved toward the door, slowly. My partner didn't wake up, or pretended not to. I still don't know. I looked through the small window beside the door first. The gravel outside was empty. No shadows, no movement, just our porch light cutting into the dark. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in. The night smelled like dust and asphalt. No one was there. I stepped down onto the gravel, looked left, looked right. The other RVs sat dark and silent. No doors open, no lights on. I waited for a few seconds, then a few more. Nothing. I went back inside and locked the door. Told myself it was probably someone confused, or drunk, or just passing through. That explanation felt good enough at the time. As I lay back down, I glanced at the clock again. 2:19 a.m. I remember thinking how strange it was that such a small thing had woken me up so completely. I fell asleep eventually, but even as I drifted off, one thought stayed with me. I had woken up before the knock, not because of it. I didn't know why that bothered me, not yet. The next day passed without anything unusual. That almost bothered me more. Morning light made the RV park look harmless. Just gravel, trees, and a few parked vehicles that could have belonged to anyone. A couple left early. Another RV pulled in around noon. Normal movement, normal sounds. I didn't mention the knock to anyone. Not to my partner. Not to the man at the small office when we paid for another night. I told myself there was no reason to. By evening, the thought had faded into the background. Dinner, dishes, a short walk around the park before dark. Everything felt ordinary again. But when we locked the door that night, I checked it twice. Sleep came slower. I woke up before the sound this time. Not suddenly, gradually. Like something had been pulling me out of sleep piece by piece. The RV was quiet. Too quiet. I turned my head toward the clock. 2:16 a.m. That was when my stomach tightened. I lay there staring at the numbers, waiting. 2:17. The knock came almost immediately. Same 3 taps, same spacing, same careful pressure. I didn't move. My partner shifted slightly beside me but didn't wake up. The knocking came again, patient, unhurried. I sat up slowly and listened. No footsteps, no shuffling on gravel, just the sound of something touching the door. I stood near the window this time, didn't open it, didn't unlock anything. Outside, the park looked exactly the same as the night before. Empty, still, no figure standing there, no shadow moving away. The knock stopped. I waited for a long time after that, long enough for my legs to start aching from standing still. Eventually, I lay back down. Sleep didn't come easily after that. In the morning, I checked the ground outside the RV. The gravel was undisturbed, no footprints, no marks near the steps, nothing that suggested anyone had been there at all. That should have reassured me. Instead, I felt something settle in my chest, heavy, quiet. Because whatever had knocked the night before hadn't needed to move, and somehow I knew it would come back, at the same time. We bought a small camera that afternoon. Nothing special, just a basic outdoor camera from a nearby store. The kind people use to watch their driveway or porch. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't professional. That made it feel safer somehow. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, so I could sleep. I mounted it low on the RV's exterior, pointed directly at the door, angled slightly downward, toward the steps and the gravel below. I remember hesitating before tightening the last screw. I didn't know why I chose to mount it so low. It just felt right. That night, I barely slept. I didn't wake up gradually this time. My eyes snapped open like someone had shaken me. The RV was silent. I turned my head toward the clock, 2:17 a.m. I didn't wait. The knock came almost immediately. 3 taps, soft, careful. I stayed where I was and listened. My heart felt slow, heavy, like it was trying not to be heard. The knocking didn't change. No anger, no urgency, just waiting. After a while, it stopped. I didn't move until the numbers on the clock changed. 2:18. Only then did I breathe out. Morning came slowly. Gray light, cold air. Everything looked the same as it had the day before. I checked the ground first. Still no footprints, no disturbed gravel, nothing near the steps. Then I went inside and pulled up the footage. The screen showed the RV door, the steps, the gravel beyond. At first, nothing happened. The timestamp read 2:16:52. The camera picked up a slight shift in light as something moved just outside the frame. I leaned closer to the screen. At 2:17:01, the knocking began. The door vibrated slightly with each tap, but there was no one standing there. No legs, no shoes, no shadow cast by the porch light. Instead, something moved near the bottom of the frame. Low, too low. It was hard to focus on, like the camera couldn't quite decide what it was seeing. A shape stretched across the gravel, close to the ground. Longer than it should have been. It didn't step forward. It didn't step back. It just shifted. Slowly, almost carefully. The knocking stopped. The shape slid out of frame. The rest of the footage was empty. I watched the clip again, and then again. I didn't show it to my partner. I didn't want to explain why I had mounted the camera so low. That night I took the camera down. But when I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept repeating itself. Whatever had been outside our door hadn't stood there. It had waited. We tried to change things. That was the mistake. That night I stayed awake on purpose. Lights off, eyes open, listening to every small sound the RV made as it cooled in the dark. I watched the clock crawl forward. 12:48, 1:31, 2:02. My eyes burned. My head felt heavy. At 2:10, I sat up straighter. Told myself I wouldn't blink, wouldn't drift. The clock read 2:14. That was the last thing I remembered clearly. When my eyes opened again, the numbers had changed. 2:16 a.m. My heart sank. I hadn't heard anything. No knock, no sound at all. Just that familiar awareness, the certainty that something was about to happen. I didn't look at the door. 2:17. The knock came. Same 3 taps. I stayed frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling. My body felt heavy, like it had already decided what was going to happen and didn't need my input anymore. The knocking stopped. I didn't check the camera. I didn't check the door. I just lay there until the clock changed. The next night, we tried the opposite. We stayed up late, watched videos, talked, let ourselves get tired naturally. I remember laughing at something stupid around 1 in the morning and thinking that maybe this was what we needed. When we finally lay down, sleep took me instantly. Too instantly. I woke up already tense. The red glow of the clock filled my vision. 2:17 a.m. The knock came right on time. I felt something cold settle into my chest. It didn't matter what we did. It didn't matter when we slept. My body was no longer waking up because of the sound. It was waking up for it. The next morning, I realized something else. I couldn't remember falling asleep anymore. Not just that night, but the night before, and the one before that. There was a gap there, a blank space, like the moment had been taken out completely. That afternoon, I packed the camera away. Didn't even bother mounting it again. I didn't want to see what it would record next. Because whatever was coming at 2:17 didn't need an invitation. It already knew when I'd be awake. The last night came sooner than I expected. We didn't talk about it, didn't make any plans, didn't try to change our routine again. We just went to bed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths. In, out. I was awake long before it happened. The clock glowed softly in the dark. 2:15 a.m. My chest felt tight, like my body was bracing for something it already recognized. I didn't move, didn't even blink. 2:16. I listened. There was no sound outside, no wind, no passing cars. Even the highway seemed distant, muted. Then the clock changed. 2:17. The knock came immediately, but it wasn't where it had been before. The sound didn't come from the center of the door. It came from lower down, closer to the floor. 3 taps, slower this time, heavier. I sat up without meaning to. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure my partner would wake up. The knocking came again. The sound was wrong, not just quieter, closer, as if whatever was outside wasn't reaching up anymore, as if it didn't need to. I stared at the door, my eyes fixed on the thin line of darkness beneath it, the small gap between the floor and the frame. I don't know why I looked there. Something shifted, not a shadow, not movement exactly, just a change, like the darkness itself had thickened. The knocking stopped. I waited. Seconds passed, then minutes. Nothing else happened. No footsteps moving away, no sound of gravel, just silence. I didn't sleep again that night. When morning finally came, pale and quiet, we packed without speaking. No breakfast, no coffee, just hands moving on autopilot. As I stepped outside, I noticed something near the door. The gravel directly beneath the RV steps was pressed down. Not scattered, not disturbed, just compressed. Like something had been resting there for a long time, low to the ground. I didn't point it out, didn't need to. We left the park less than 10 minutes later. I never looked back. We drove for hours that day. No music, no talking. The RV felt different once we were on the road. Smaller, tighter, like the walls were listening. I kept checking the mirrors, not because I thought something was following us, just to make sure nothing was still there. We didn't stop until well after dark. A rest area off another highway. Brighter, busier, safer. Or at least it felt that way. That night, I slept in short fragments. Never deeply, never long. I woke up once around 3, another time close to 4, but there was no knock. In the morning, while my partner went to get coffee, I pulled out the camera. I don't know why I did it then. Part of me had already decided not to look, but I needed to know. The footage loaded slowly. I scrolled back through the nights. Second night, third night, the last night, all there. Out of habit, I went further back. The first night, the screen jumped. The timestamp skipped from the afternoon we arrived straight to the next morning. No file from 2:17 a.m. No footage at all. I checked again and again. The camera hadn't malfunctioned. It hadn't stopped recording. That night was just gone. I put the camera away and never used it again. We didn't talk about the RV park after that. Not really. Life went back to normal. Work, errands, sleep, mostly sleep. But sometimes, even now, I wake up suddenly in the dark. No sound, no movement, just that familiar awareness. I don't reach for my phone anymore. I don't need to. I already know what time it is. It was early evening when he knocked. Not late, not the kind of hour that makes you immediately tense up. The sun was already down, but the RV park still felt awake. Porch lights on. A couple of people walking dogs. Someone laughing somewhere 2 rows over. I was inside the RV, finishing up dinner. Nothing fancy, just something warm to eat before settling in for the night. The knock came soft and brief. 2 taps. I hesitated for a second. Not because I felt scared, because opening the door meant interacting. And sometimes, after a long day on the road, you just want to be left alone. I looked through the window first. He stood a few steps back from the door. Middle-aged, clean clothes, hands visible. No hoodie, no backpack, no rush in his posture. The kind of person you wouldn't think twice about passing at a gas station. I opened the door. "Hey," he said. His voice was calm, almost tired. "Sorry to bother you." I nodded, waited. "My RV's on the other side of the park," he said. "Bathroom's acting up. Any chance I could use yours real quick?" He smiled slightly, like he already knew the answer might be no. I glanced behind him. The path between the RVs was lit, empty, quiet. I thought about saying no, I really did, but nothing about him felt urgent, or strange, or wrong, and it was just a bathroom. "Yeah," I said. "Sure." I stepped aside and let him in. He thanked me and took off his shoes at the door without being asked. Placed them neatly by the steps. A small thing, polite. He moved slowly as he passed me, careful not to brush against anything. Didn't look around. Didn't comment on the space. The RV suddenly felt smaller with someone else inside it. "I'll be quick," he said. I nodded again. He walked toward the bathroom and closed the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should have. I stood there for a moment, listening. No water yet. No movement. I told myself to relax. It was just a guy using the bathroom, and in a few minutes he'd be gone. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I leaned against the counter and took a few bites of my food while I waited. The RV felt the same as it always did. Warm, quiet, familiar. A minute passed, then another. I glanced at the bathroom door, still closed, light on, no sound of running water yet. I told myself he was just taking his time. I rinsed my plate and set it in the sink, moved a few things around, anything to keep my hands busy. The silence stretched. No flushing, no footsteps, no movement at all. I checked my phone without really meaning to. 5 minutes. That was longer than it should have taken, long enough for the thought to form. I listened more carefully. The RV makes noise when someone moves inside it. Floors creak, cabinets shift. You feel it. But the space behind that door was completely still. I took a step closer and stopped. Not close enough to knock, just close enough to hear. Nothing. I tried to picture what he was doing in there. Standing at the sink, sitting down, washing his hands, none of it fit the silence. Another minute passed, then another. I felt my shoulders tense without realizing it. The air inside the RV felt thicker, harder to breathe. I looked down at the shoes by the door, still neatly placed, untouched. That was when it hit me how long he'd been inside my space, not just the bathroom, the RV. I cleared my throat and spoke, keeping my voice light. "Everything okay in there?" My words sounded louder than they should have. No response. I waited. Still nothing. The light behind the bathroom door stayed on. I stood there, listening to the hum of the power hookup outside, the faint sounds of the park drifting in through the walls. And for the first time since I'd opened the door for him, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Not because of anything he'd done, but because I suddenly had no idea what he was doing at all. I stopped checking my phone. I didn't want the exact number anymore. I just wanted it to be over. I leaned against the wall and tried to focus on the sounds outside the RV. A car starting somewhere down the road. A door closing. Voices drifting past and fading. Normal things. Things that reminded me there were other people around. The bathroom door stayed closed. The light stayed on. I counted in my head instead. 10 breaths. 20. I stepped closer again. This time, right up to the door. I could feel the warmth of the light through it, hear the faint hum of electricity, but nothing else. No shifting weight, no fabric moving, no sign that someone was even inside. I raised my hand and hesitated, then knocked. Not hard, just enough to be heard. "Hey," I said, "everything all right?" My voice sounded thin in the small space. I waited. Nothing. I knocked again, slightly firmer. Still no response. I stood there longer than I should have, my hand resting on the door, my eyes fixed on the handle, half expecting it to turn on its own. It didn't. I stepped back. The shoes by the door caught my eye again, still perfectly placed, like he'd stepped out of them carefully, with no intention of leaving quickly. I realized then how strange it was that I couldn't remember hearing him walk into the bathroom. I remembered the door closing, the latch clicking, but not his footsteps afterward. I tried to replay it in my head, tried to find the moment where things stopped making sense. It wasn't there. The RV felt too quiet now, like it was holding its breath. I stood in the middle of the space, unsure of what to do next. I didn't want to knock again. I didn't want to open the door, and I didn't want to admit how long it had been. Because once I did, I'd have to accept that something about this situation was no longer normal, and that whatever was on the other side of that door wasn't following the same rules I was. I knocked one last time, harder than before. My knuckles hit the door with a dull sound that echoed through the RV. "Hey," I said, louder now. "You okay in there?" The words felt strange in my mouth, like I was asking permission inside my own space. I waited. Nothing. The light behind the door stayed on, bright, steady. I reached for the handle and stopped myself just short of touching it. I don't know what I expected. A voice, a shuffle, any sign that someone was still there. Instead, the RV felt heavier, like the air itself was pressing down. I stepped back and sat on the edge of the bed, tried to slow my breathing. This was ridiculous, I told myself. It was just a guy in a bathroom. But the longer I sat there, the more that explanation stopped working. I realized then how quiet everything else had become. No sounds from outside, no footsteps passing by. Even the low background noise of the park felt distant, muffled. I stood up again and looked toward the door. The shoes were still there, neat, side by side, facing inward. That's when it hit me. If he was still inside, he hadn't shifted his weight once, hadn't adjusted his stance, hadn't moved at all. And if he wasn't inside anymore, I didn't finish the thought. I stayed where I was, eyes locked on the bathroom door, waiting for something to change, for the light to flicker, for the latch to click, anything. Minutes passed. I couldn't tell how many. Eventually my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my partner asking if everything was okay. They were outside talking to someone. I stared at the screen, then back at the door. "Yeah," I typed. "Just a minute." As soon as I sent it, the bathroom light went off. No sound, no warning, just darkness behind the door. I stood there, frozen, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever had been in my RV was done using the bathroom, and it hadn't told me. The door opened slowly, not all at once, just enough for the light from inside the bathroom to spill out into the RV. He stood there, same man, same clothes, same calm expression. Nothing about him looked rushed, or embarrassed, or apologetic. He didn't look at me right away, just glanced down as if checking where he was standing. "Sorry about that," he said. His voice sounded normal, steady, almost casual. I lost track of time. I didn't answer. He stepped past me without waiting for a response, moved carefully, like he didn't want to bump into anything. His eyes stayed forward, never met mine. As he reached the door, he paused, turned slightly. "I almost forgot where I was," he said. The sentence didn't sound like a joke. It didn't sound like an apology either, just a statement. Then he opened the door and stepped outside. I stood there, listening as his shoes scraped softly against the gravel, listened as the sound faded. I waited for him to turn back, to say something else. He didn't. When I finally looked into the bathroom, everything seemed normal. Light off, toilet untouched, sink dry. No sign that anyone had used it at all. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the space, trying to understand how someone could spend that much time in a room without leaving any trace behind. Outside, the RV park had returned to its usual noise. Voices, footsteps, life moving on. But inside my RV, something felt permanently off. Not broken, claimed. I locked the door as soon as he left, not loudly. Not in a rush, just a quiet click, like I was trying not to draw attention to the fact that I was suddenly alone again. My partner came back a few minutes later, holding 2 cups of coffee, asked casually if everything was okay. I said yes. I didn't tell them about the time, about the silence, about the way the bathroom had felt less like a room and more like a pause. That night, I checked every cabinet before going to bed. Every drawer, every corner of the RV. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. At least, not at first. It wasn't until the next morning that I noticed the small things. The trash can in the bathroom had been turned slightly. Not knocked over, just rotated. The hand towel hung differently than I remembered, folded once more than usual. And the cabinet under the sink, it was closed, but not latched. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. I knew I always latched it. Everyone who owns an RV does. You don't want things sliding around when you drive. I asked my partner if they'd opened it. They hadn't. We left the park later that morning. I watched the other RVs as we pulled out, looked for his, tried to remember which direction he'd walked when he left. I couldn't. I don't let strangers inside anymore. Not for bathrooms, not for directions, not even if they ask politely. Sometimes people knock anyway. I don't answer. And every now and then, when I'm alone in a quiet place, I catch myself listening. Not for footsteps, but for the sound of someone moving carefully through a space that isn't theirs. We parked just after midnight, not because we were exhausted, just tired enough to stop. It was a rest stop off the highway, one of those wide pull-offs with a few long-haul trucks already lined up, engines cooling, lights dimmed, quiet but not empty. I remember checking everything before turning in. Parking brake, doors locked, keys clipped to the hook by the dash. I stood outside for a moment, stretching, letting my eyes adjust to the dark. The highway lights were visible just ahead, a soft orange glow cutting through the trees. I made a note of it without realizing why. Inside, the RV felt steady, familiar, safe in that temporary way only vehicles ever do. We brushed our teeth, changed, talked about the next stretch of the drive, normal things, planning things that felt certain. I climbed into bed and glanced once more toward the front. The highway lights were still there. I fell asleep thinking about how easy it was to stop trusting the road when you weren't moving. Sleep came quickly, no dreams that I remember, no sudden waking, no sounds pulling me out of it, just darkness. When I opened my eyes again, something felt off immediately. Not wrong, just different. The RV was too quiet. I sat up slowly and looked toward the front window. The highway lights were gone. In their place was darkness, trees, and a narrow road I didn't recognize at all. I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then one thought cut through everything else. That wasn't the view I woke up to. I stayed sitting there for a few seconds, trying to place myself. That moment after waking when your mind hasn't caught up yet, when you expect the world to look a certain way, and it doesn't. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The narrow road outside was real. The trees were close, too close. No trucks, no glow from the highway. I leaned forward and checked the side mirrors. More trees, uneven ground, gravel that looked darker than the rest stop we'd parked at. My partner stirred beside me. "What time is it?" they asked, still half asleep. I checked my phone. 7:02 a.m. Daylight filtered in through the front window, pale and thin. The kind of light you get early in the morning when the sun hasn't decided where it's going yet. "We should be by the highway," I said, more to myself than to them. They sat up slowly and looked out the window. Neither of us said anything for a moment. "This isn't where we stopped," they said finally. I shook my head. I climbed out of bed and moved toward the front, checked the door, still locked, checked the parking brake, engaged. The keys were still clipped to the hook, exactly where I'd left them. I stepped outside. The air smelled different, damp, earthy, like we were deeper into the trees than we'd been the night before. The ground beneath the RV sloped slightly, enough that I noticed it immediately. I walked a few steps in each direction. There were tire marks in the gravel, fresh, leading away from where we were parked, but none leading toward the highway. I stood there longer than I meant to, trying to make sense of it. People don't just move RVs in their sleep, not without waking up, not without noticing. When I went back inside, my partner was already pulling up the map on their phone. The blue dot blinked for a moment, then settled. We weren't at the rest stop anymore. We were miles away. We didn't say much at first. Both of us stared at the map on the phone like it might correct itself if we waited long enough. The blue dot stayed where it was. I zoomed out, then more. The rest stop we'd parked at the night before appeared as a small gray icon far to the north. Too far. I tapped the screen and pulled up directions. The number at the top made my stomach drop. 43 miles. That was the distance between where we had gone to sleep and where we were now. I checked the timestamp again, 7:04 a.m. Even if one of us had driven, it would have taken close to an hour. Longer, maybe, with back roads and turns. Neither of us remembered any of it. I opened the driver's door and looked inside more carefully. The seat was pushed slightly back, not much, just enough that my legs wouldn't sit the way they normally did. The side mirror on the left was angled outward more than usual. Small changes, easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. I checked the fuel gauge. It was lower than it should have been. Not empty, not suspicious, just used. I asked my partner the question I didn't want to ask. "Did you drive?" They looked at me like I'd just said something cruel. "No," they said immediately. "Did you?" I shook my head. We stood there in silence for a long moment, listening to the forest around us. Birds, wind through leaves, morning sounds that didn't care what had happened overnight. I opened the dash cam app on my phone. The footage loaded. There was video from the previous afternoon, us pulling into the rest stop, parking, turning off the engine, then the next file. Morning light, trees, this place. Everything in between was missing. Not corrupted, not glitched, just skipped. The timestamps jumped forward as if the RV had been still the entire time. I scrolled back and forth, zoomed in, checked file details. Nothing suggested anyone had touched it. No sign of deletion, no missing fragments. Just a clean break where the night should have been. I locked my phone and leaned against the counter. People talk about losing time like it's a feeling. This wasn't that. This was distance, fuel, adjusted mirrors, proof that something had happened whether we remembered it or not. And whatever it was had taken us somewhere on purpose. We checked everything again. Not because we expected a different result, but because neither of us was ready to accept what we were seeing. I opened the dash cam files one by one, slid the timeline slowly, frame by frame. The last clip from the night before ended cleanly, not abruptly, not mid-motion. The engine shut off, the headlights dimmed, the screen went dark, then nothing. The next file started with daylight, no static, no corrupted frames, just morning. I checked the system logs, the timestamps, the file sizes. The gap was exact. From 12:41 a.m. to 6:58 a.m. 6 hours and 17 minutes. I stared at that number longer than I should have. If the camera had lost power, there would have been a restart log. If the files had been deleted, there would have been a trace. There wasn't. It was as if the RV hadn't existed during that time. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was still correct. The mileage, though, wasn't. I hadn't noticed it before. The number was higher than it should have been by a small but undeniable amount, enough to match the distance on the map. I ran my fingers along the steering wheel, the gear shift, the door handle. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt broken. No signs of someone getting in. No signs of us getting out. My partner sat down across from me and rubbed their eyes. "What if one of us drove?" they said quietly, and just doesn't remember? The idea hung there. It was the most comforting explanation we had. I wanted to take it, but then I thought about the turns, the exits, the narrow road we were on now, about how deliberate it would have taken to get here, and about how neither of us remembered even a second of it. I shook my head. If one of us drove, I said, we would remember something. I didn't say the rest out loud, that whoever drove knew exactly where they were going, and they weren't lost. It was the small things that finished it, not the distance, not the missing hours. Those could still be argued, explained away if someone tried hard enough. It was the cabin. I noticed it when I sat down in the driver's seat again. My feet didn't land where they usually did. The pedals felt farther. The seat had been adjusted, not drastically, just enough to feel unfamiliar. I checked the settings on the side. The backrest was tilted a few degrees lower than I ever used. The seat pushed back slightly, like whoever sat there had longer legs. I hadn't noticed it before because it still felt comfortable. That was the problem. The side mirror on the passenger side had been angled downward, just a touch. The rearview mirror tilted so it framed the back window perfectly, centered, balanced. I turned on the radio by accident while reaching for the dash. A local station came through, clear signal, no static. The volume was set low, not muted, not loud. Exactly the way someone would leave it if they planned to keep driving. I checked the trip computer. The average speed matched the distance we'd traveled overnight. The idle time didn't. There were no long stops recorded. Whoever had driven hadn't hesitated, hadn't pulled over, hadn't gotten lost. They'd gone straight from where we parked to where we woke up. I stood in the middle of the RV and looked around. Nothing was out of place. No drawers left open. No items shifted. No signs of a rushed movement or a mistake. If someone had been inside, they had treated the space carefully, respectfully. That thought made my skin crawl, because it meant whoever drove hadn't been confused. They'd known this wasn't their RV. They just acted like it was temporary. I met my partner's eyes. They'd noticed it too. The way everything still worked. The way nothing felt violated. Just used. We didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. The RV hadn't been taken. It had been borrowed. We didn't call the police. We talked about it for less than a minute before deciding not to. There was nothing to report. No break-in, no theft, no damage. Just a story about waking up somewhere else. I could already hear how it would sound out loud. So we did the only thing that made sense at the time. We left. We didn't drive far, just enough to get back onto a main road. Back where signs made sense and the pavement felt familiar again. I drove the rest of the day. My partner stayed quiet, watched the road, checked the mirrors more than usual. That night we didn't stop at a rest area. We found a campground with an office, a gate, a check-in desk with a real person behind it. Before going to bed, I did something I'd never done before. I took the keys off the hook. I kept them with me. I slept lightly, woke up often. Every sound pulled me back to the surface. But when morning came, the view outside the window was the one I expected. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Because even now, when we travel, there are rules. We don't sleep anywhere the RV can easily pull back onto the road. We don't park facing an open exit. And if one of us wakes up in the middle of the night, we check the mirrors. Not for people, for movement. I still don't know who drove, but I know it wasn't us. And whatever it was, it knew exactly how far it wanted to go. We had planned to stop an hour earlier. That was the original plan. Find a campground before it got too dark. Plug in, eat something warm, sleep. But the road kept stretching on. One exit blurred into the next. The sky darkened faster than we expected, and the GPS started thinning out its options. Fewer icons, longer distances between stops. My phone buzzed with a low battery warning. I ignored it. "We should see something soon," I said, mostly to reassure myself. The GPS disagreed. No campgrounds nearby. No rest stops for another 40 miles. The road narrowed as we turned off the highway. Trees closed in on both sides. The kind of road that feels temporary, like it exists only to get you somewhere else. That's when we saw the sign. A simple wooden board, planted a few feet off the shoulder. RV Park, vacancies. No logo, no phone number, just an arrow pointing down a darker side road. I slowed down instinctively. It didn't feel hidden. It didn't feel rushed. Just there. I checked the GPS again. Zoomed in, out. Nothing showed up where the sign pointed. "Maybe it's new," my partner said. "Or private." That made sense. Plenty of small parks don't show up right away. We followed the arrow. The road dipped slightly, then curved. Gravel replaced pavement. The trees opened just enough for headlights to catch a gate ahead. As soon as we rolled closer, the entrance lights turned on. Not all at once, one by one. The RV park looked finished. Not new, not abandoned, just complete. Rows of gravel pads stretched out on both sides, each one marked with a small wooden post and a number burned into it. Electrical hookups stood ready, water spigots capped. Everything lined up the way it should have been. There were other RVs parked there, at least 6 that I could see right away. Lights were on inside some of them, a soft glow behind curtains, blue light from a TV screen flickering faintly through a window. But no one was outside. No footsteps on the gravel. No doors opening or closing. No voices carrying through the trees. I pulled into an empty spot near the middle and shut off the engine. The silence settled immediately. Not the quiet of a place winding down for the night. The quiet of a place that was already asleep. We stepped out and plugged in. The power connected without a problem. The outlet hummed to life like it had been used earlier that day. I glanced toward the office. A small building sat near the entrance. Porch light on, door closed. A sign in the window read "Open." I waited for someone to come out. No one did. My partner walked a few steps down the row, trying not to make noise. Gravel crunched loudly under their boots, the sound carrying farther than it should have. They stopped and looked back at me. "Do you hear that?" they asked. I listened. Nothing. No generators running, no distant highway noise, no wind in the trees. Just the faint electrical hum from our RV and the soft tick of cooling metal. We stood there longer than necessary, both of us waiting for something to happen, for a door to open, for someone to acknowledge we were there. Eventually we went back inside. I locked the door without thinking about it. As I pulled the blinds closed, I noticed something else. Every RV window around us was covered. Not curtains half drawn, not shades pulled unevenly, completely closed. Like everyone inside had decided on the same thing at the same time. I tried checking the maps again once we were inside. Google Maps first. I zoomed in slowly, following the road we'd turned off from. Every curve, every branch, nothing. I switched to Apple Maps, then Waze. Same result. The road existed, the turn existed, but the RV park didn't. I set the phone down and stared at the screen like it might fill in the blank on its own. "I'm going to ask at the office," I said. The porch light was still on when I stepped outside. The door opened easily, like it had been unlocked the whole time. A bell sat on the counter. I rang it once. After a few seconds, someone appeared from the back. An older man, clean clothes, tired eyes, calm in the way people get when they've done the same job for a long time. "Evening," he said. "Hi," I said. "We just pulled in. I was trying to find the park online, but..." He nodded before I finished. "It doesn't show up," he said. Not defensive, not confused, certain. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Longer than the road," he said. "Road came later." That answer didn't land right. I smiled anyway, tried to keep it light. "So, how does check-in work?" He slid a clipboard across the counter. No logo, no business name, just a list of handwritten site numbers. "Cash in the morning," he said, "if you're still here." The way he said it stuck with me. If. I glanced back through the window toward the rows of RVs. "Do a lot of people stop here?" I asked. "All the ones that find us," he said. I waited for him to say more. He didn't. When I walked back outside, the porch light turned off behind me. Not abruptly, like someone had decided it wasn't needed anymore. Night settled in quietly. Not all at once, just a gradual dimming, like someone turning down a dial. The lights along the rows stayed on, soft, even, too evenly spaced to feel accidental. Each pad lit the same way, with the same low hum beneath it. I watched from the front window for a long time. No headlights approached, no taillights pulled away, not a single RV moved. I checked the time, 9:14 p.m. That wasn't strange on its own. People settle in early, close their doors, turn in. But as the minutes passed, nothing changed. No doors opening, no footsteps crunching on gravel, no late arrivals looking for a spot. The park felt sealed. I stepped outside again, this time walking slowly down the row. Each RV looked different, different models, different years, but they were all positioned the same way. Straight, centered, wheels perfectly aligned. No awnings out, no chairs, no signs that anyone had stepped outside recently. I paused beside one and listened. A television murmured inside, low volume. Some late-night show laugh track bleeding faintly through the wall. But when I knocked lightly, just once, the sound stopped. Not faded, stopped. I waited. Nothing resumed. I moved on, my footsteps loud in the quiet. At the end of the row, I turned back toward our spot. The office porch light was off now. The open sign in the window was dark. I checked my phone again. No signal. Not weak. Gone. I walked back faster than I meant to. Inside our RV, my partner looked up the moment I closed the door. "Has anyone come in?" they asked. I shook my head. "Anyone leave?" Again, no. We stood there together, listening. The hum of electricity, the faint tick of metal cooling, and beneath it all, a silence that felt maintained, like the park was actively holding its breath. I locked the door. This time, I made sure. Morning came without warning. No gradual light, no bird song easing the dark away. I woke up because the RV felt different, lighter, like something nearby was missing. I sat up and looked out the window. The spot beside us was empty. Not just empty in the way a vehicle leaves behind space. Clean. The gravel pad was smooth, undisturbed. No tire marks. No indentation where weight had rested overnight. I stared at it longer than I should have. That RV had been there when we went to sleep. A white one. Older model. Curtains drawn tight. I remembered it clearly because its porch light had been brighter than ours. My partner woke up when I opened the door. "It's gone," I said. They stepped outside with me and followed my gaze. "Maybe they left early," they said. I shook my head and pointed to the ground. There were no tracks, no marks leading out, no signs of movement at all. It was as if the RV had never been there. We walked the length of the row, counted the sights. One was missing, not empty, missing. The numbering skipped from 14 to 16. I went to the office. The porch light was back on. The door unlocked. The same man stood behind the counter, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "Morning," he said. "There was an RV next to us last night," I said. "It's gone." He didn't look surprised. He glanced at the clipboard. "No," he said. "That site was empty." I pointed toward the window, toward the row. We parked next to it. I saw it. So did my partner. He looked up then, not annoyed, not confused, patient. "People misremember things when they're tired," he said. "Happens all the time." I waited for him to say more. He didn't. I walked back outside feeling colder than the morning air justified. As we packed up, I looked at the other RVs. Every curtain was still closed, every window still covered. No one stepped out to leave. No one waved. No engine started. We were the only ones moving. As we pulled toward the exit, I looked back one last time. The row looked shorter than it should have. We didn't leave right away, not because we wanted to stay, but because neither of us was ready to turn the key. The park looked the same in daylight, cleaner even, the gravel brighter, the trees less threatening, like everything had settled into something ordinary. That made it worse. We packed quietly, no talking, no second guesses. As we drove toward the exit, I slowed down without thinking. The turn felt wrong, too open. I checked the passenger side window, then the rear view mirror. The wooden sign wasn't there. No RV park. No vacancies. No arrow pointing anywhere. Just an empty shoulder and a line of trees like the road had never branched at all. I stopped the RV, got out, walked back a few steps. There were no holes where the sign had been planted. No disturbed dirt, no broken grass. Nothing to suggest it had ever stood there. We pulled back onto the road and drove for a long time before either of us spoke. Later that day, I tried searching again. Different phones, different apps, different spellings. Nothing came up. Not even a mention, not a review, not a warning post buried on a forum. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that place. Not because I want to go back, but because I know I could. I remember the turn, the curve in the road, the way the trees opened just enough for headlights to catch the gate. It's still not on any map, but I know exactly how to get there. We pulled in just before dark. It was a normal RV park, clean entrance, clear signage, a handful of reviews mentioning quiet nights and decent hookups, nothing that stood out. We chose a spot near the back, close enough to the tree line to feel private, far enough from the road that traffic noise faded quickly. The RV next to ours was already there. I noticed it while backing in. Older model, white, curtains drawn tight across every window. The porch light was on, bright enough to spill onto our pad. I assumed someone was inside, maybe reading, maybe watching TV, maybe waiting for someone else to arrive. I didn't think much of it. We plugged in. The power came on without a hitch. Everything worked the way it should have. That alone felt reassuring after the last few nights on the road. As the sky darkened, the light from the RV beside us didn't change. It didn't dim. It didn't flicker. It stayed exactly the same. I glanced at it once more before closing our blinds. The glow pressed through the edges of the fabric, faint but persistent. "Looks like they're up late," my partner said. "Yeah," I said. Inside our RV, we ate dinner, talked about the next day's drive. Normal things. The kind of conversation you have when you're trying to convince yourself everything is settled for the night. Before bed, I checked outside one last time. The RV next to us hadn't moved. No door opening, no shadows passing behind the curtains, just that steady light. I turned off our lamp and lay down. In the darkness, the glow from next door was still visible. A thin line under the window frame, unchanging. I remember thinking it was strange how bright it was. Bright enough to still be on when most people would have turned in. Bright enough to feel intentional. The light never dimmed. I woke up sometime after midnight. No sound had pulled me out of sleep. No sudden noise. No movement. Just a feeling. The kind that makes you open your eyes without knowing why. The RV was dark. Quiet. My partner was breathing evenly beside me. Everything inside felt settled, except for the light. It was still there, a thin line beneath the window frame. Same brightness, same color, not warmer, not dimmer, unchanged. I checked my phone, 2:11 a.m. I lay there for a moment, telling myself it didn't mean anything. Some people keep lights on. Some people can't sleep. Some people feel safer that way. Still, something about it bothered me. I sat up slowly and pulled the curtain back just enough to look. The RV next to ours looked exactly the same as it had hours earlier. Curtains closed tight. No silhouettes, no movement behind the fabric. The porch light cast a hard glow against the side paneling, sharp enough to leave no shadows. I watched for a while. Nothing shifted. No flicker from a TV. No change in brightness. No sign that anyone was adjusting the light at all. I stepped quietly to the door and cracked it open. Cold air rushed in. The gravel outside reflected the light like pale bone. The RV beside us stood there, perfectly still. No sound came from inside it. No generator hum. No ventilation fan. No footsteps. I took a few steps closer. Up close, the windows told the same story. Curtains pulled so tight they looked fixed in place. No gaps, no wrinkles. No sign of hands or bodies behind them. I waited. I don't know what I was expecting. A cough, a shift, a flicker of motion. Nothing happened. The light didn't respond to my presence at all. When I went back inside, I locked the door. This time, I stayed awake. The light never changed. Morning didn't arrive all at once. The darkness thinned slowly, the way it does when the sun hasn't quite decided to show itself yet. The sky outside shifted from black to a dull, colorless gray. The light was still on. I noticed it before I was fully awake. The same thin line under the window frame. the same steady glow pressing against the inside of our RV. I checked the time. 6:03 a.m. Daylight should have softened it, made it irrelevant. It didn't. I pulled the curtain back farther this time. The RV next to ours looked unchanged, exactly as it had at midnight, exactly as it had at 2 in the morning. Curtains closed, light on, no movement. The brightness felt wrong in daylight, too sharp, too deliberate. People were starting to wake up around the park. I could hear distant doors opening, a car engine turning over somewhere closer to the front. Someone laughed briefly. Life was returning, but not next to us. I stepped outside. The morning air smelled damp and cold. Dew clung to the gravel, catching the light from that RV in a way that made it glisten unnaturally. I walked closer. Up close, it felt less like a parked vehicle and more like a prop that had been placed there. Too still, too composed. I knocked. Once. Lightly. Nothing happened. I knocked again, louder this time. No response. The light didn't flicker. The curtains didn't shift. I put my hand on the door. It was cold. Colder than it should have been after a night with the light on. I stepped back. Behind me, someone walked past on the gravel. I turned quickly, relieved to see another person. "Hey," I said, "do you know who's staying in that one?" They followed my gaze, frowned. "That one?" they asked. "Yes," I said. "It's been lit up all night." They looked at it for a moment longer than necessary. "I don't think anyone's in there," they said finally. Then they shrugged and walked away, like that settled it. I stood there alone, staring at the light. It didn't belong to the night anymore, but it didn't belong to the day either. I went to the office after breakfast, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed someone official to tell me I was wrong. The office was already open, coffee brewing, a couple of flyers taped to the bulletin board, local trails, fire warnings, a handwritten note about quiet hours, normal. The man behind the counter looked up when I walked in. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied. I had a question about the RV next to ours. He didn't ask which one. He just nodded once. "The one with the light," I said. He poured coffee slowly, like he had all the time in the world. "That one's been there a while," he said. "How long?" I asked. He shrugged. "Long enough." I waited. "Is someone staying in it?" I asked. He took a sip of coffee before answering. "I don't think so." That was the same phrase I'd heard earlier. "I knocked," I said. No answer. "The light's been on all night." He nodded again. Same calm motion, same lack of surprise. "It does that," he said. I felt a flicker of irritation. "What do you mean it does that?" He finally looked at me properly then. Not cold, not defensive. Measured. "Some things here don't work the way people expect," he said. "Most folks don't stay long enough to notice." I glanced back toward the window, toward our row. "Why don't you turn it off?" I asked. He set the mug down. "We don't touch it," he said. The way he said "we" told me this wasn't a rule written anywhere. It was just understood. I left the office with more questions than I'd brought in. Outside, the sun was fully up now. The park looked ordinary again. Families walking dogs, someone loading gear into a truck, the sound of life moving forward. I stopped beside our RV and looked at the one next to it. The light was still on, unchanged. For the first time since we'd arrived, I realized something else. No one had parked next to it. Not last night, not this morning. It had been left alone, deliberately. We stayed one more night, not because we wanted to, because leaving would have meant admitting the light had decided for us. By the time the sun went down, the RV park felt different again, quieter, thinner, like the day had been peeled away instead of replaced. The light was still on, but it wasn't the same. I noticed it just after dinner. Standing at the sink, rinsing a plate, I caught the reflection in the window. The glow looked flatter, not dimmer, not brighter, colder. I stepped outside to get a better look. From a distance, the RV next to ours was unchanged. Same position, same curtains, same porch light. Up close, the color was wrong. It wasn't warm anymore. Not the yellow-white of a bulb meant to make things visible. It had shifted towards something pale and washed out, like light filtered through fog. I stared at it longer than I meant to. The light didn't spread the way it should have. It didn't bounce. It didn't soften edges. It just sat there. I raised my hand slowly and passed it through the edge of the glow. My skin looked gray inside it. Color drained out, like the light wasn't illuminating anything, just revealing it. I stepped back quickly. Inside our RV, my partner was watching from the window. "Something's different," they said. I nodded. As night settled in, the park went quiet again. Doors closed, engines shut off, voices faded. The light stayed. Sometime after midnight, I realized something else. The glow wasn't spilling outward anymore. It was focused, angled, like it had been adjusted. Not to light the ground, but to face us. I closed the blinds. The light pressed through anyway. Not brighter, closer. I lay awake, listening to my own breathing, aware of the thin wall between us and whatever that light belonged to. It wasn't trying to get in. It didn't need to. It was already looking. We left before sunrise. No discussion. No second looks. Just quiet movements and the sound of the engine turning over. As we pulled away, I didn't look back right away. I waited until we reached the curve near the entrance, until the trees thinned, until I knew this was the last moment the RV park would still be behind us. Then I checked the mirror. The light was still on. A single pale square in the distance, steady, unchanged. Weeks later, I tried to forget about it. That worked, mostly, until I was sorting through old photos on my phone one night, clearing space, deleting duplicates, the usual things you do when you're trying to feel organized. I stopped on one image. It was from a trip years earlier, different RV, different state, different park, but the layout was familiar. Same angle of gravel pads, same tree line in the background. And there, 2 spots over from where we'd parked in the photo, was an RV I didn't remember seeing at the time. Older model, white, curtains drawn tight. The porch light was on. I checked the date, 3 years ago. I scrolled further back, found another one. Different trip, different year, same RV, same light. Always parked at the edge of the frame. Always just far enough away that I wouldn't have noticed it at the time. Always lit. I don't know who stays inside it. I don't know why no one turns it off. But I know this. Wherever we stop next, I check the lights first. And if one of them never changes, we keep driving.
If you're still listening, that means nothing pulled you away. Nothing told you to stop. Most people don't realize when they're supposed to leave. They notice it later, when the light is still on, when the place feels different the second time. These stories don't end when the sound fades. They stay with you, quietly, patiently. And if one of them felt familiar, if you've ever stopped somewhere that didn't feel wrong until it did, you're not alone. The road goes on. The next stop looks safe. It always does. Just remember, some lights don't turn off when you leave.